So about 3 months ago, I opened the door to my home, and this is what I heard. Now, I got to tell you, I was a little bit surprised because the only person in my house who plays piano is my daughter, Tess, and she's been basically playing the same dozen songs for the last 4 years. Do you know Ode to Joy? Anyone know that song? Right, so yeah. So I thought maybe we had a house guest or something, but sure enough, as I turned the corner, I saw that it was Tess playing the piano, and I just sat there for a second and listened to her, and then I looked at her and I said, Tess, you're learning Journey. How cool is that? And she turned to me and she kind of smiled, and then she looked to the end of the piano where I noticed that she had taken my computer, my laptop, and loaded up a YouTube video by someone who I had no idea who he was, but who was teaching her how to play Don't Stop Believin' by Journey, and that she had actually also downloaded the sheet music illegally. We had a little conversation about copyright later that night. But it was great. All in all, I was pretty happy. Here was my child taking the initiative to learn something that she wanted to learn without anybody telling her to do that. And for the next couple of days, she was practicing. And sure enough, her piano teacher came later in the week, and when she came in, I said, Jen, guess what? You're not going to believe this. Tess is learning Journey. And Jen looked at me, and she goes, she's what? I said, she's learning Journey. She's learning Don't Stop Believin', and she sounds great. She's been practicing. I'm so proud of her. And she goes, well, she can't do that. She's not ready to play Journey. Second story I want to tell you really fast is a story about a 17-year-old young man from Ontario. His name is Mark Klassen. And this is a video, the sound is down, but this is a video that Mark just posted to his blog a couple weeks ago. He's a cinematographer, and you can see by watching this, he's got a great eye. He's a talented kid, 17 years old to be doing this, right? Here's the interesting thing about Mark. He's not spent 1 minute in a traditional classroom learning how to do any of this. He has apprenticed a little bit with some professionals around Toronto, but for the most part, how Mark has learned to do this is through the interactions and the connections that he has online with other people from around the world who love cinema, who do film, and who interact with him in ways that teach him a lot about his craft. This is his blog. He actually did some stuff for NFL Films last year, believe it or not, right? And he's got a great blog where he reflects on the work that he's doing, and he gets comments back from people all the time. This is his Vimeo site, where you can see he's pretty connected. He's got lots of videos up there. And I love showing this little snip because these are Mark's teachers. These are the people who he is engaged with on a regular basis. And all of these people pretty much are strangers to Mark, by the way. Now, here's the deal. I actually had a chance to interview Mark a couple months ago for a book that we were finishing up. And I asked him, I said, so what does this network stuff mean to you, Mark? And he said, and this is a little bit of a long quote, but basically, I love the part where he says, those connections make it possible for me to gain a bigger audience, which means more feedback and more learning. A lot more people are finding me now. And I gotta tell you, I think this is just the coolest moment to be a learner right now, isn't it? It's very different from the moment that most of us had when we were growing up. We didn't share this moment, but in this moment, our kids can learn pretty much whatever they want, whenever they want. And it is a big shift that I think as educators we have to begin to understand. One of my favorite authors, John Seeley Brown, captures this, I think, pretty well in his new book called A New Culture of Learning, where he says, basically, you know, if we have access, and I know there are lots of kids out there who don't have access right now, lots of families, and I think we have to get those kids connected at this moment. It's almost a moral imperative to do that. But if they have access, our kids now have an easy connection between their passions to learn and the people and the resources to learn it. And I think that's pretty amazing, to be honest with you. You know, Mark and my daughter Tess are not waiting for a curriculum to deliver to them the things that they want to learn. They're simply going out and learning those things when they want to. And I gotta tell you, I just think that's really, really cool right now, and something that even 10 years ago, I don't think we could have imagined to the scale and to the scope that we have right now. Now, the reality is, at this moment, however, it's not a very cool time to be in education. It's not a very amazing time for education right now. In fact, if you look at the headlines across this country, there are strikes, there are budget cuts, there are all sorts of arguments going on in terms of how do we deal with the situation that we're in around education. 60 kids in a classroom in Detroit this fall. You hear stories all the time of our kids not keeping up with our global peers in terms of the tests that we're taking. And I have to tell you, though, I think the hardest part of this moment for me as someone who's in the classroom for over 20 years is the talk about the profession right now. The way that people are discussing teaching, I think, is really difficult at this moment. I met a friend of mine, actually, who teaches at the school where I was. I saw him last weekend, and I said, Kevin, how is it? And he said, It's really not great. And this is in a good community with good kids and a very supportive curriculum. He said, I've taken actually to stop looking at my Facebook page because the comments from my friends on Facebook were so just disturbing and depressing that I don't even want to go there anymore. I just don't even want to deal with it any longer. And so this is not a great time for us at this particular moment. Now, despite this, there are lots of people out there who have solutions on how to make schools better. And I don't want to miss the point. Better means higher student achievement or school improvement almost always in the context of higher student test scores. That is what better looks like. And some of these solutions, you know, they're bandied about as if they're just easy. Wave a magic wand and all of a sudden we'll get these better test scores. Let's fire all the bad teachers, right? That's the first thing we need to do. Just get rid of them. And I don't know who we're going to replace them with, but we'll deal with that later. Let's just get rid of the teachers whose kids aren't scoring up to where we want them to be on the test. That's one way to do it. Or, you know, if that's not going to work, well, then let's, as the president suggests, let's tie teacher salaries to the test scores, right? That'll work. And we all know where that's going, right? It's going to be more teaching to the test because teachers want to make more money just like anyone else. And so if it means that their kids have to get better test scores, they'll do that. Or let's have a common core standard, right? So that we can have everybody learning the same thing in kind of this one-size-fits-all kind of curriculum. And that will probably lead to a national assessment that will make it really easy for us then to make sure that those kids in Louisiana are achieving at the same rate as those kids in Massachusetts or communities against one another or whatever else. Or let's just wait for Superman to just kind of sweep in, as they did across the river, with Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook coming in and giving Newark $100 million to make schools better in Newark. And you know that that investment is going to be measured by how well those kids score on the test. At the end of the day, that is how we're going to judge it. Now, you know, I've seen this better thing up close. Last fall, I was in a high school in Texas where English teachers told me that they are reading from the same PowerPoints on the same day in order that their kids get the same content so they can take the test and pass it. And by the way, they're doing a great job. They're an exemplary school in Texas for doing that right now. And 3 years ago, I stood in a third grade classroom in Florida where teachers took index cards out and read scripts, literally read scripts to their third graders so that those third graders would pass the FCATs. Because if they didn't pass the FCATs, there are huge ramifications around that, right? And you can even look at the news this week in Memphis. How wonderful is this? You've heard about this, right? Teachers in a pilot group now are going to be wearing wireless earbuds. And they're going to be coached from other observers in the back of the room, almost NFL style. So basically, if they're doing something wrong at the moment, they'll get a message in their ear to do something different. And by the way, let's not miss the point. In this article, it's all about raising the needle on the test scores. That's why we are doing this. So let's not make any mistake about what better means. It means this. Now, I got to tell you, as a parent of 2 kids and as someone who's been learning in these spaces for almost a decade now, if this is your definition of better, you can have it. I don't want this for my kids. I don't want this for any kids, to be honest with you, because this means that basically schools are test prep. And if you want test prep, that's fine, but realize that if you want test prep, you don't need schools any longer for test prep. Because you can sit your kids down in front of a computer right now with an internet connection and send them to MIT OpenCourseWare or to Newton or to Khan Academy, and they will get personalized, self-paced curriculum where they can pretty much get prepared for the test, right? And I understand why we go for better. I understand why we want better, because most of us are products of this system, and we can relate to what better means. We've sat in those desks, those same desks that our kids are sitting in. We've read the same books that our kids are reading from. We've taken the same tests that our kids have taken, and we've forgotten the same answers that our kids are going to forget as they go through school. So we know this. We know this system. And let's be honest about it. The system worked pretty well for a few decades, right? And even 20, 30 years ago, it was cranking along, and we were still okay with it. But I got to tell you right now, this system is killing our kids. It is taking all the imagination, all the creativity, all the initiative, all the engagement right out of them. I see it in my kids all the time, and you see it in yours too. You know, I talk to parents a lot, and we don't often use the same words, but we have the same kind of dismay, and we have the same kind of bad feeling about this that is sometimes tweeted out even in some different ways. But this is where we're at, right? This is where we're at. This is what happens. This is what happens when we have a system that's in place that's very, very hard to get rid of. Now, I have to tell you that I think it's time that we stop trying to do schools better and we start trying to do them differently. Now, my kids, Tess and Tucker and Mark and your students and your kids are learning in a way today that is just very, very different. And I think it's amazing every time I think about it that they can actually take the phones out of their pockets, or they will take the phones out of their pockets. And with a couple of clicks, they will have access basically to 2 billion potential teachers and the sum of human knowledge in their pockets. And I gotta tell you, if we look at this world as it is, we know in our heart of hearts this is not the same as it ever was. This is really different. And we have to think about what that means in terms of preparing kids in a much, much different way. Here is the hard truth that we have to accept. Schools, in the form that they were constructed, are no longer relevant to our kids' lives in terms of places to get information and knowledge. Information and knowledge are everywhere. And what that means is we have to begin to re-envision schools for a different purpose right now. And I think that purpose is actually more meaningful, more important, and more difficult in a lot of ways, because schools for our kids right now have to be places of deep inquiry where they are solving real world problems, because they have a lot of problems that they're going to need to solve. Where classrooms and teachers are learning basically how to collaborate with global peers to create beautiful, important work that they can share with the world, that can teach others. Where we can help them find their passions and support those passions so they can become the lifelong learners in these contexts that we all want them to be. And I have to tell you, none of that is the stuff of test prep. All of that is the stuff of life prep. And all of that requires great teachers, teachers who are too good to be reading PowerPoints or index cards or having earbuds put in their ears telling them how to teach. And I think it begs this question, to be honest with you, and that is right now, we have to ask, do we really want our kids to be prepared for their futures by a system that has not fundamentally changed in 125 years? And I got to tell you, my answer is no. I think at this moment, we have to take back this conversation about education. We have to take it back from the businessmen and the politicians who are trying to wrest it from us. And we have to scream, literally scream to whoever will listen, that test prep and learning are two very different things, and that one is being lost at the expense of the other right now. And that is just not acceptable for our kids. We each have a role in this, every one of us. We have to see the world differently right now. We have to see it for the connections and the networks that are possible. And each of us has to be willing, I think, at this moment to re-examine our own learning in these contexts. Because here's the good news, right? Those easy connections that our kids have to the people and the resources that they need to learn about whatever it is they're passionate to learn, we have those too. Those are our connections as well, if we want to take advantage of them. And I think that's an amazing opportunity, and I think we have to seize that moment right now. One of my favorite quotes right now is from Eric Hoffer, who says, "In times of change, learners inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. This system was built for a world that no longer exists." We have to stop talking about better. We have to start talking about different. And for our kids' sake and for our sake, we have to do that now. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.